Yo guys, what is going on? We are covering Harman Smith yet again today, and Harman Smith is someone that I have covered many different times here on the channel for his Nintendo shilling. And well, surprise, surprise, we're covering him yet again today for his shilling for Nintendo, and more specifically him claiming that piracy and emulation is over because one idiot got caught breaking the law. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that literally makes absolutely no sense at all, I would have to agree with you, but I mean, that is just kind of par the course for Harman Smith. Harman Smith allows his fanboyism to completely destroy his ability to make a logical argument, and let's get into the video because I have a lot to say.
It's been a very common thing among the gaming community to acknowledge that Nintendo's games are a step above the rest of the industry.
One thing that is very common with Harman Smith is he will drop an opinion and kind of present it as if it's a fact. Yes, some people prefer Nintendo games over non-Nintendo games, but some people prefer Xbox games over Nintendo games. Some people prefer PlayStation games over Nintendo games. Some people prefer Valve games over Nintendo games. It's all personal preference. Coming out and saying Nintendo games are better than non-Nintendo games because I say so will never be a compelling argument. I mean, that shit may have worked when you were in preschool, but that shit is not going to work against grown adults on the internet. Like, we're not fucking 5 years old.
But as a kind of a cope, as a kind of a seed, as a way to damage control, as a way to downplay Nintendo and its success, the narrative online has always been, well, why don't you just emulate the Nintendo games? You know, the idea being that you can just illegally download Nintendo games online and just play them on a PC or a mobile device or a toaster or a calculator or whatever you want, essentially.
Yeah, believe it or not, you don't have to illegally download anything in order to play a Nintendo game on an emulator. Now you can, it's definitely an option, and it's the easier way to play an emulated game. But the idea that you need to pirate a video game in order to play it on an emulator is the biggest fucking lie I have ever seen in my life. You can redump your own cartridge. I know a lot of people don't do it and they would rather just pirate, but that is always an option. Cope. Emulation has been legal since 2000. It became legal once Sony lost their lawsuit case in 2000 against a company called Kinetic. Yeah, fuck even trying to pronounce that, dude.
The narrative has always been that emulation makes Nintendo hardware completely obsolete.
And that right there is just complete bullshit. People who play on emulators and play Nintendo games, especially Switch games on emulators, do not care about making the original hardware obsolete. They would just like to play at a decent frame rate and resolution. Believe it or not, 720p 30 FPS for $100 here in Canada is not appealing to everyone. But you know what is a little bit more appealing? Redumping that game and putting it on an emulator and being able to play at 4K 60 or 4K 120 if you can find a mod that supports it. Being able to play at 1080p 60 on a Steam Deck. That is appealing. Tears of the Kingdom, in my opinion, was a really fun game, but the performance issues were abysmal. I mean, the thing basically had a stroke every time you tried to use an ability. I mean, the Switch was acting as if it was on fucking life support. Obviously, emulation is not going to make the Switch hardware obsolete. I mean, the Switch is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Nobody is trying to push that narrative. And if they are, they're brain dead. Also, Harman, you like to make these claims. Oh, people who emulate Nintendo Switch games are trying to push a narrative that the original hardware is obsolete, but you never show any sort of evidence or anybody even making these claims. I mean, I would tell you to show a source, but we all know the source being used.
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
This has been a thing for a long time now and has been a cope and a seed for forever. Even when it wasn't even possible, right? You know, there was a long period of time where the 3DS was not cracked and you could not pirate any of its games and there were no emulators. And The same thing could be said for the Wii U and the Switch.
Okay, and you know what ended up happening? People created emulators over time, and then people seen that the emulators were a little bit more appealing than playing on the original hardware, and they moved to the emulators. Obviously, the majority of people didn't, and most people played on the original hardware, but what the fuck is wrong with people using the emulators if they're not pirating? I'll answer that question for you. There's nothing wrong with it.
This idea that you can just download a game off the internet easily with no issues is completely wrong.
Well, I mean, the entire reason you made this video is because a guy got caught doing exactly what you're saying isn't possible to be done. For those of you who don't know, the entire reason he made this video is because Nintendo sued a pirate who pirated Brothership and streamed himself playing it early. Now you could say, oh well, that proves that you can't get away with piracy. But the only reason he got caught is because he streamed it. How many people do you think did the same thing that this streamer did and just didn't stream themselves playing it? Come on, man, don't be delusional. It is so easy to do what this streamer did and just not stream it. I mean, do you not even realize that your title doesn't make sense? Nintendo sues Switch Pirate, proving that Nintendo emulation is illegal. No, you should reword that to Nintendo sues Switch Pirate, proving that piracy is illegal. The reason why he got sued is not because he emulated, it's because he pirated and played the game early and streamed it.
And there's been a lot of signs of that, right? Younger people are coming out and saying that, like, they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to find the ROMs. They don't know how to cycle through the files. They don't know how to set up an emulator, right?
I mean, that just proves that younger people are getting stupider and stupider, and this comes from someone who was born as a part of Generation Z. If you take 30 minutes of your life and put aside, you can easily learn how to set up a Switch emulator and get games working on it. It's not that difficult, dude. The only difficult part is redumping your own games, and it's funny that Nintendo wants to make it more difficult to redump your own games because that only pushes more people towards just pirating them.
Younger people have been talking about this for a while, and this has been known, right, that emulation isn't the seamless, easy-to-do thing that people make it out to be.
It is easier than ever before to emulate, dude. There are so many different emulators out there, and now emulators are even available on, like, phones and stuff. So, please, cut the bullshit. For anyone that learned the skill called patience with their time on this planet, they can easily figure out how to set up an emulator with the countless guides out there that exist. Just because you're too lazy to go through the effort to set up an emulator doesn't mean everyone else is also too lazy.
But now, what's been happening lately over the past several months is Nintendo is finally starting to crack down on the most vocal, hardcore emulation shills. They are going after players, right? They are going after the people who make a big deal out of pirating Nintendo games. The sort of person you see on 4chan claiming that they download the game and play it like a month before release, right?
Well, yeah, they're going after the people that openly admit and prove that they commit crimes, but they're not going after people who are just emulating completely legally, and they're not going after people who pirate and don't prove that they're pirating. Also, you claim in your title that emulation is illegal, which means Nintendo are criminals, because you know why? It turns out that Nintendo are using emulators at their Nintendo Museum. Someone unplugged a controller and that pesky Windows sound snitched on them.
You know, we had this situation with Brothership, right? Where a bunch of people claimed to have pirated the game and saw that it was like, ooh, it's super bad, guys, but in reality, the game was fantastic. So, we've seen people, like, try and use emulation to downplay major upcoming Nintendo games, right? This is not like a conspiracy. This is like a thing that actually happens. So,
oh, so it's not a conspiracy and there's proof that it happens. Then why do you never ever show a source in this video? Why don't you show one of these people claiming this? Is it because you're making it up? I mean, obviously that's a rhetorical question. He is making it up.
So when it comes to emulation, right, the thing about it is, in order for people to know that it's a thing, these people have to go out and they have to aggressively try and pretend as if emulation is superior to official releases.
I mean, playing a Nintendo game emulated on a PC or Steam Deck is superior objectively to playing it on a Nintendo Switch, for example. You get to create backups of your game in case you lose the thumb drive that the game is on. You can play in higher resolutions, you can play at better frame rates, you can play with mods, you can play online on games that had their online services shut down. You can download save files from the internet to basically start at whatever point of the game you would like to start at, and the list just keeps on going, dude. It is just so much better on an emulator. Would you rather play Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64 at 20 FPS 240p or 4K 120 FPS on an emulator?
Right. Traditionally, they've always said that, like, you can play anything you want and there are no limitations, and it's easier to do than playing. It's a higher quality than it is on Nintendo servers, but that simply isn't true.
Yeah, my ass, that isn't true. Literally, how are you going to sit and argue that 240p 20 FPS on Ocarina of Time is superior to 4K 120 FPS on a PC? The only way you can argue that playing on a Nintendo 64 is better is if you are completely blinded by loyal fanboyism to Nintendo and you just do not argue with facts, reasoning, and logic.
Nintendo Switch Online is expanding to the point where everything is just going to be available on the system with no issues whatsoever. And that's been true for a long time.
Oh, that's been true for a long time, has it? Alright, let me pause this video and go grab my Switch and boot up the Wind Waker on my Nintendo Switch via GameCube emulation with Nintendo Switch Online. Okay guys, I'm back, and it turns out that he was lying yet again. The Wind Waker is not available on Nintendo Switch Online, and I don't prefer to sit and wait for Nintendo to port it. I would rather just emulate it. Your argument is literally, don't emulate the Wind Waker right now. Sit and wait for Nintendo to release an overpriced port. You have to be kidding me, dude. This is the most shilling I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is the most blatant shilling.
But people have been coping and seething about that forever. And so what we're starting to see, because all of these Nintendo games are now publicly available, we're seeing more and more people start to realize that the emulation situation is not worth it.
I would love to know why it's not worth it, but I doubt you're going to explain it. Harman Smith just completely lacks basic argumental skills. When you are trying to argue something, you're supposed to say, this is not worth it, here is why, but Harman just says, well, it's not worth it because I say so.
And as a result of that, the emulation enthusiasts have to come out and do everything in their power to try and convince you that, like, no, I have a better experience, and I'm better than you, this is better than Nintendo hardware, like, I'm so much better, and...
You know, I'm gonna let Sneaky of the Past explain this to you once again. You get to create backups of your game in case you lose the thumb drive that the game is on. You can play in higher resolutions, you can play at better frame rates, you can play with mods, you can play online on games that had their online services shut down, you can download save files from the internet to basically start at whatever point of the game you would like to start at, and the list just keeps on going, dude. It is just so much better on an emulator. Yeah, thanks, Past Sneaky, for explaining that yet again.
Like, emulator shills are always coming out, trying to get noticed and trying to get people to care about them.
The fact that you have been shilling for like 6 years or however long you've been on YouTube for Nintendo and want to call someone else a shill is truly the most ironic thing I've ever seen in my life. Dude, you have lost the privilege to call anyone else a shill. I mean, I have counted multiple times, including in this video, where you have shilled for Nintendo Switch Online.
And every single time, whenever they get any kind of traction whatsoever, whether it's Yuzu or Ryujinx or like Citra or Cemu, every single time they get slapped down by Nintendo.
Okay, but even when they do get smacked down, they're still so easy to obtain for anyone who has basic knowledge of how the internet works. You do realize that once something is put up onto the internet, it is there forever and people can always find it by using archives and other methods. Also, Nintendo taking down emulators means nothing when people already have the emulators downloaded to their computers, and Nintendo doesn't take down the sites that people use to pirate the games.
Dudes are getting fined. They're getting put into prison. They're becoming literal slaves to Nintendo because they cannot help themselves. They keep incriminating themselves.
Yeah, most people who are pirating games, hate to break it to you, are not incriminating themselves, and it's only select individuals that are stupid enough to stream themselves playing pirated games. And it's hard to feel bad for someone who got arrested because he was so stupid that he literally streamed himself committing a crime. But allow me to make something very fucking clear for all the idiots in the comment section that like to argue this with me. The crime is not him emulating the game, it's him pirating the game, which he obviously did because he played it early.
Over and over and over and over again, to the point where the case against them is iron tight, which is what happened with this recent situation in which a pirate, was asked by Nintendo to stop streaming emulated games, to stop covering emulated games, to stop promoting piracy, and he kept saying, nah, nope, no way, no, haha, you can't do anything to me, Nintendo. And what do? They do something. They do something.
Well, yeah, because he fucking pirated. If Nintendo had a problem with people just emulating games, they would have went after all these channels doing performance tests on Yuzu and Steam Deck performance tests of Nintendo emulated games. Why did they go after this individual? Because he pirated, not because he emulated. Also, even if Nintendo starts taking down videos of just people using emulators with legally emulated games, people are still going to emulate. They're just not going to show it online. They're not going to show themselves doing it.
They put a stop to that nonsense. And it's only a matter of time until that starts affecting organizations like Some Ordinary Gamers.
You see, the thing is with Some Ordinary Gamers is Some Ordinary Gamers has played emulated games before, like Yuzu or whatever, but he shows himself actually buying a physical copy, so he's doing it 100% legally. They can't get him for anything. Some Ordinary Gamers showed himself playing a Nintendo game early on an emulator, but the reason why he didn't get in trouble is because that GameStop broke a rule or something and gave out physical copies early, and he emulated it 100% legally. Nintendo didn't do shit about it.
Or the Steam Deck, or, Valve, Gabe Newell himself was terrified of the idea of the Dolphin emulator being on Steam, right? If emulators were so legal, why exactly is this billionaire terrified of hosting one on his service, right?
Or he just didn't want to deal with Nintendo's bullshit, so he took it off Steam, and people still can easily get Dolphin working on their Steam Decks. I mean, I literally have Dolphin on my Steam Deck because I use EmuDeck. Also, why the fuck are you defending Nintendo for this? Dude, those games made on the Wii and GameCube aren't even sold anymore. Who gives a shit if people pirate or emulate them?
That the emulation thing is on the decline, right? They can't hide in like third world countries like they used to. They can't like circumvent the law, right? Nintendo has firmly established that pirating games is illegal in spite of all the coping and seething from the community.
Yeah, and pirating has always been illegal. Now, a lot of countries, they won't even persecute you for it. However, it's always been illegal, and nobody is upset over that. It makes sense why piracy is illegal. However, you always get it mixed up with emulation, and that is the problem. Once again, I'm going to bring attention to the title of your video. You say that Nintendo sues a Switch pirate, proving that emulation is illegal despite the two things being different. If you simply titled the video Nintendo sues a Switch pirate, proving that piracy isn't legal, everyone would agree with you. But you just get it mixed up with emulation all the fucking time. And so many people like myself had made video responses to you over the span of years, and you still do not understand it.
And it is a dying industry. Like, we are seeing an end to the business of piracy. And
well, no, we're not seeing an end to the business of piracy. One idiot got caught by proving to the world that he pirated, and Nintendo caught on to what he was doing and punished him because, believe it or not, piracy is illegal.
this is something Nintendo won, is my point. And I think people aren't ready to acknowledge that Nintendo winning in this fashion is a huge blow against PC gaming and mobile, because without piracy of better software, these platforms don't have any real appeal. Why exactly would I play some shitty gacha game on iPhone when I could just play something better on my Switch?
Yes, PC and mobile are just going to completely die like King Tut, because games are just better on Nintendo because this guy says so. Despite the fact that Steam is constantly hitting records of all-time users, and mobile has like the biggest market of all time. You know, completely ignore those things. Harman, you know, the Nintendo fanboys in your comment section may be on your side, but there is one thing that will never be on your side, and that are facts and logic.
And I do think the gaming community is moving in that mindset where like they would much rather play something like Mario and Luigi Brothership over Dragon Age or Starfield or Baldur's Gate 3, right?
Okay, I will agree that I would much rather play Mario and Luigi Brothership over Dragon Age, because Dragon Age has the worst writing I have ever seen. But Baldur's Gate 3 is actually a really good game, and Starfield is kind of mediocre.
There are so many better games on Nintendo platforms. There really isn't any need to bother with PC or mobile. But
the PC market has much different experiences to offer than the mobile market, which has completely different experiences to the Nintendo market. There are completely valid reasons why somebody might want to go with mobile or PC over Nintendo.
The cope has always been that like, oh, well, we can just pirate those games if we want to play them. That is not true, and it never has been true. And
well, that statement that it's never been true completely contradicts this video. This entire video was made because someone pirated a Nintendo Switch game and got caught doing it because his dumbass decided to stream it. You know how many people would do the exact same thing and just not stream it?
And it's becoming public knowledge that Nintendo is coming after you for trying to do that.
Well, no, they're not going to come after people for just pirating because there's too many people you'd have to go after. But when an idiot literally streams himself doing it and says, "Here, Nintendo, here's all the evidence," then it's kind of easier for Nintendo to crack down on that guy. Harman, seriously, how do you not understand this?
Your attempts at downplaying Nintendo software and hardware have completely and utterly failed. To the point where going into next generation, I'm sure there is going to be a period of time where these people are not going to be able to pirate the new upcoming Nintendo games.
Yeah, there likely will be a period of time, but you know what happens after that period of time? Those things become possible and people start doing them just like they did with every single previous Nintendo platform. And I'm not even saying it's right to pirate, but I'm just saying these are facts. The fact is that people eventually will be able to do these things. And to huff copium and say, no, these things will never be possible, or people won't wait to be able to do these things, is idiotic.
It's obvious to me that the ideal way to play these games that we know nothing about will be on the official Nintendo hardware. Piracy, emulation is in no way superior to the official release. And Nintendo has done nothing but prove that over and over and over again for the past 30 years.
Hey, Sneaky of the past? Yeah, I'm gonna need you again. Explain why emulators are better. You get to create backups of your game in case you lose the thumb drive that the game is on. You can play in higher resolutions. You can play at better frame rates. You can play with mods. You can play online on games that had their online services shut down. You can download save files from the internet to basically start at whatever point of the game you would like to start at, and the list just keeps on going, dude. It is just so much better on an emulator. I'm sorry to literally become a broken record here, but I mean, there's no other way to hammer this in.
And we are reaching the point where this is becoming common knowledge, and YouTubers are going to have to cope and seethe about the decline in relevancy of the piracy community.
Anyway, that wraps up today's video. I hope I made myself very clear in today's video. Emulation is not illegal, and it is not going anywhere. The reason this streamer got in trouble is not because he emulated, it's because he pirated. Alright, peace.